So in 2014, my beautiful wife Ruth and I, we bought a townhome in Florida. And it was a big house for us because it was a 3-bedroom townhome and it was just the two of us. And since we're kind of like all about side hustling, we came up with a brilliant idea of, using Airbnb as a side hustle. So I thought it would be great to have Ruth come and share some of the lessons that we learned when we were side hustling on Airbnb. So if you are considering, using Airbnb as a platform for you to make some extra cash, these 5 lessons that she's going to share could be really, really helpful. And we also have in the description a link to 101 side hustles that you can download, and if Airbnb is not the thing for you, you can find 100 other things that could potentially be that side hustle that you'd like to do. So anyway, I'm gonna hand it off to Ruth, and she's gonna share the 5 things that we learned when we were doing Airbnb as a side hustle.
Kick things off, I will say that the Airbnb experience was one of the most exciting and interesting things that I have done, prior to that time. Now, there are a few things that I will note in here today that I do want you to take a moment to really research and get a little more detail before you hop onto jumping on Airbnb. First lesson that we learned was that you have to do your homework. You have to research your community. So if you live in a community setting, so if it's a townhome, apartments, any of that, make sure you research to understand if short-term leasing is something that is permitted in your community. That is one thing that we forgot to check and forgot to make sure that short-term leasing was something that we could do. So take that extra step, find out from your HOA, and if you do live in your regular home, I will recommend also checking in with your neighbors to see if they're cool with it and they can keep an eye out on the house for you. So still on the topic of research, you want to look into your community and your neighborhood to see what are some of the qualities that really stand out. So you can put those on your listing to make sure it gives you that extra edge. So if you are 10 minutes from the beach, if you're close to a mall, find out all those attractive locations that are nearby. So that's going to help your listing stand out. Second thing that we learned while doing Airbnb is that you want to give the hotel experience. While it's a home or an apartment, you still want to provide that inviting hotel experience when people walk in. From the get-go, you're meeting them in person to welcome them into your home, or in essence, their home away from home. Now, if meeting them in person is not an option because of the time that they're checking in, make sure you at least have a welcome note that has detailed instructions on where they can find everything and also how they can reach you immediately. You want to provide the basic necessities, bathroom accessories, and I would say go a little extra step and provide free coffee. Everybody loves good coffee. So there's an argument between having short-term stays versus long-term stays. Now, I would recommend having short-term minimums because that allows you to have more people in, more turnaround, more turnover time, and that also means more money. Initially, when you start off, some people would prefer to have a 5-night minimum stay, so that way they're guaranteed to make money throughout the month. What I would suggest is at least a 2-day minimum stay, or even a 1-night stay. That's absolutely fine. Because the more flexibility that you give to your potential guest, the more comfortable they are in case of emergency and they have to check out. So give that short-term minimum. Now, although short-term minimum stays are better, they will require a little more cleaning and changing of bedding and providing more because you have more guests coming in. So the fourth thing we learned while doing Airbnb is that dynamic pricing is key. During low seasons, we do recommend that you drop the prices if you need to, because that's going to keep people interested and that's going to keep people coming to your listing. Airbnb allows a fixed price or a dynamic price. You can stay with fixed price throughout the entire year or month if that's what you prefer, but I would recommend dynamic pricing. So drop it when you're in low season. And then during peak season, you can increase the price because you are guaranteed that people will book your listing because it's peak season and they need somewhere to stay. The fifth and final thing that we learned while hosting Airbnb is that you want to do your due diligence on your guests. Now, this is your property, so do not be afraid to go the extra mile and get as much information as you can on the guests or the people that are staying in your home. Now, Airbnb does background checks and they do verifications, but typically it's off the person that the account information is under, and not specifically every single guest. So do not be afraid to request information about every single person that is coming to live in your house, because you will avoid a lot of nightmares that we experienced. For example, we had a guest book the apartment and only put one person, but when they checked in, 2 people checked in. And that was the first red flag. But we trusted blindly and allowed them to stay. A couple of days into the stay, we noticed some strange things happening, and those were a little more red flags for us. So we went ahead and requested the driver's license for the second guest. Well, upon checking and looking into him, we discovered that he had just been released from prison. And for us, that just made us feel unsafe. But luckily, they actually ended up checking out the next day, a week ahead of their scheduled checkout time. So do the homework, find every single information you can about each and every guest that is coming into your home. And here's one bonus tip. When you begin your listing, make sure you work towards getting that super host badge. Most Airbnb visitors are more comfortable getting the booking from somebody that has the super host badge than not. And don't be afraid to ask for reviews from your guests. The more positive reviews you have, the more likely others are going to want to select your listing. And now here's Kuda, who's going to give you another bonus tip.
Yeah, so the bonus tip I'll share with you is do not be afraid to start if you haven't started. Because with us, we had no experience with Airbnb. We literally just learned on the job. But one thing that we quickly realized was that Airbnb, it's all about hospitality. So being a good host means that you think about what would be the type of experience you'd like to get when you are traveling. So if you always have that as your frame of reference when you're thinking about how to provide added value to your guests, I think you will see that the experience for you as well as the guests will be amazing. And more importantly, you'll get extra cash flow that can enable you to pay off your bills or even the mortgage for the place. So it's a good side hustle that you should definitely consider if you have the space in your house, or if you actually want to then buy a separate property to actually do an investment like that. And there are businesses out there like NewRez by Noel Randall that enable you to invest in Airbnb short-term rental properties without you having to buy the rental yourself. We are actually investors with NewRez, so there's a link in the description below where you can actually go and check out what the company does and just be on the lookout when they start raising more capital for their properties as well. So there are different companies that enable you to get into the Airbnb business model without you having to use your property. But if you're going to be using your property, we hope that the tips that Ruth shared today could be super helpful in giving you the tools that you need to get started. So go out there and go hustle.